Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. Don't forget tomorrow night after the Thunder Rockets game we're having a live post-game show. If you're on the East Coast, stay up late. You could be tired going into work on Monday morning, that's okay. Now let's get to the Warriors versus Nuggets because it's a real interesting take on two different coaches. And quite frankly, Mark Jackson is completely out-coaching George Karl. Now, one of the problems I have is George Karl has been rotating his rotations way too quickly, and none of the Nuggets players get a chance to settle in and get a rhythm with each other. Meanwhile, Mark Jackson has been able to exploit a lot of matchups, and I don't think there's any question that there really isn't much George Karl can do now. They're pretty much stuck with what they have, and without Gallinari, it's really been a major blow, and I didn't think it was going to be. But they're missing another good shooter on the outside, and their defense is disorganized enough and giving the Warriors enough openings where I don't see this series turning around for them at all. You may remember we pointed out this lineup was killing the Nuggets through the first two games. In Game 3, Karl looked at the same tape we were and didn't put this lineup out there at all. However, the new problematic lineup is this one. While their offensive rating is pretty good, their defense is abysmal. Karl simply swaps McGee for Kufos, and the Nuggets still struggle to rotate out to the Warriors shooters. George Karl has turned into a mad scientist with his matchups. On some possessions, he has Chandler guarding Bogut, McGee guarding Landry, and Andre Miller on Harrison Barnes. While on other possessions, it's Miller on Klay Thompson and Iggy on Harrison Barnes. All this switching of matchups by Karl causes confusion. It appears Chandler is doubling Curry off a ball screen, but if the Nuggets were on the same page, McGee would have rotated over onto Bogut. Instead, Bogut gets to the hoop, but make no mistake, this shot is incredibly hard to make over McGee. I think the reason why Karl put Chandler on Bogut is so he'd have someone a little more mobile to hedge when Bogut screened for Curry. In Game 4, if this happens, expect to see Bogut post up the smaller Chandler. In Game 3, Jackson opted to not screen the ball to avoid Chandler being involved, but it did get them open shots since McGee isn't used to closing out on shooters. There were times McGee was on Bogut and Golden State went right to the high screen and roll. McGee simply can't get any higher than this to hedge, and it lets Curry get penetration. Watch how he drives into the overload on the right side. This seems like a mistake until you realize it's really a clear out to force Iggy to help and get Klay a wide open shot. Because of the overload, Golden State has weak side rebounding position, and when Miller has to guard Curry, forget about it. The Warriors didn't have to overload to get an open shot out of the screen and roll. Chandler helps on Bogut even though Fareed was in position. An excellent hook pass by Curry gets Barnes an open look. Karl hopes the mobile Fareed can do a better job on the screen and roll. But look how Bogut has clearly set a screen for Curry to go to his right, yet Fareed is several steps to the wrong side. This is outrageous, and it's also a splash when he can't even get a hand up. Klay Thompson has become the LeBron of the Warriors defense, called upon to stop Ty Lawson, Iguodala, and Andre Miller. Here, Miller can't handle Klay's size and length. And when Karl has him guarding Harrison Barnes, there's no contest in transition and Denver has to foul. Here's Klay picking up Lawson and containing his drive, forcing him to give it up and neutralizing his effectiveness. Here's another possession where Andre Miller willingly picks up Curry. Judging by his hands on his hips, he ain't happy about it, but it's McGee who does a poor job boxing out, and this gets Miller back onto Jarrett Jack. Bogut lays some good wood on the pin down and the Denver bench is upset, but it's this beautiful flare screen that catches Lawson off guard since McGee doesn't call it out well enough. Also, look at his footwork. His first step should be with the right foot in a straight line towards Curry. Instead, he crosses his left foot over his right towards the corner, then has to make a 90-degree turn to challenge the shot. Golden State has gotten shredded by Ty Lawson drives to the basket, so they're more than willing to sag and force him to shoot mid-range shots, something he's very average at doing. Now Lawson knows this and will break off his attack before pulling up, giving it to Andre Miller, who is even worse in the mid-range than Lawson is. Here is something subtle that's happening by having Miller and Lawson in at the same time. If Miller shifts to the traditional point guard out on top, Lawson tends to move towards the corner. With this alignment, when a shot is missed, it's Miller as the back line of defense. He is forced to pick up Curry, and Chandler helps one pass away. Even though this is a miss, you can't give good shooters open looks at the rim. It'll come back to haunt you. We know that Denver doesn't really have a structured offense, which is why Golden State's zone has been effective. The only real knockdown shooter on the floor is Wilson Chandler, but instead of having him spot up for a shot, they flash him to the free throw line. When Lawson finds a seam, Iggy wanders into the lane without a purpose and Lawson turns it over. And it's after another mid-range brick by Lawson where we see some transitional defense issues that are severe. Fournier should be picking up Curry and Lawson picking up Jack. If Lawson hustled on this, he could get Jack no problem, but instead, he takes the easy way out and has Fournier pick him up. Jack wastes no time getting by him and a foul. I find myself scratching my head often with Denver's offense, which makes sense since there isn't one in the traditional sense. For the life of me, I can't figure out what Andre Miller is doing here by jogging into the middle of a pick and roll. Strangely, it works, getting Lawson an opening, but look how difficult this shot is to make over two people while getting fouled. And in crunch time, when you need to rely on a good system of offense to get a good shot, the Denver offense simply ISOs Lawson, who takes and misses yet another mid-range jump shot. To explain this further, with Fareed in there and no movement on the weak side to occupy the defense, Bogut can simply shadow Lawson and prevent him from even trying to get to the basket. Denver gets what it thinks is their best defensive matchup, Iguodala on Curry and Fareed on Bogut. So Golden State simply screens Fareed first, slowing him down enough to provide a huge gap for Curry to exploit. Had Curry dunked this, I would have soiled my pants. Down 3, Denver races back down and gets a great look at 3 when Curry should have ran right to Lawson in the first place. However, Lawson can't tie it up. More unorganized offense. Because Lawson is their second best three-point shooter, they want him spotting up for a game-tying 3. So they turn to Andre Iguodala to run pick and roll. Iggy is ranked in the 24th percentile for pick and roll ball handler. Minimum 82 pick and rolls, there are 105 players better than him. It would have helped had Fareed actually stopped to screen the man, but I'm not surprised to see Iggy get stuck up in the air trying to pass and turning it over. On the Chandler 3, Mark Jackson might have overcoached this. He put Richard Jefferson in cold. He had played 2 minutes at the end of the first quarter and nothing since. Remember, when there's a switch on defense, it's Jack's job to call out the switch, since he knows if he'll be able to stay with Miller or not. Jack doesn't need the switch, but Jefferson switches anyway and completely screws the pooch, leaving Jarrett Jack to hustle his ass off to cover for him. Great find by Lawson and a great shot by Chandler for the swish. In the huddle, I think Mark Jackson should have grabbed that clipboard and drawn up a better play. Look at what they did. One guy deep in the backcourt standing around, and 3 guys in a line. In these situations, the screener tends to be the guy who can get open as the 2 defenders focus on the cutter. Without the 5th offensive player involved, this allowed the inbounder's defender to roam and stop Curry from getting the ball. A simple switch on the screen for Clay, which is way too far away from the ball anyway, renders this out-of-bounds play a failure. The Nuggets were equally effective running pick and roll or isolations this year, ranked 9th in both categories. Without Gallinari, they lacked their second best ISO player, so it was strange to me they opted to ISO with Lawson, who's their 3rd best ISO player, when Andre Miller is their best isolation player and is rated significantly higher than him. This play was devised poorly from the start since there was no one for Lawson to pass to, enabling the Warriors to double him and force the turnover. So there you have it, sports fans. The Warriors are in a perfect position to take this series, to get one more game at Oracle, and if they go up 3-1, forget about it. I don't know if George Karl is going to be able to settle on a 5-man rotation that he's going to be able to play 15 or 20 minutes in a game and let them get a rhythm. Right now, they're too disorganized both on offense and defense to handle what the Warriors are offering. So I'm not so sure that this is going to be a good series for Denver, and it really hurts them that Gallinari is injured. I wouldn't have thought it, but that's true. They needed another shooter desperately. Well, don't forget to join us for our post-game show tomorrow night after the Rockets Thunder. It'll be a great one. And also, lots more coming up all week while the playoffs unfold. And don't forget, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?